Most people think AI is just getting smarter, but there's a secret dilemma holding it back from true reliability. If humans can't even agree on what's toxic or fair, how can we expect an AI to get it right? Enter the forest versus tree problem, the ultimate battle for the future of AI evaluation. Google researchers just ran a massive stress test to find out which strategy actually works. The results might completely change how you look at the intelligence in artificial intelligence. Is AI as reliable as we think? Let's dive into the data.
All right, let's get right into it. We all want smarter AI, right? But how do we actually know if an AI model is truly getting better? Well, the answer is way more complicated than you might think, especially when we're dealing with things that even humans can't agree on. Today, we're going to break down a huge challenge in AI, the forest versus tree dilemma.
Take a look at this. Is this social media comment toxic? We've got 6 people saying, yep, it is, but 4 people saying, nope, not at all. So, who's right? If you were building an AI to flag toxic content, what answer would you tell it is the correct one? This right here, this simple example, is the core of the entire problem.
And this really is the central question we're tackling. When the so-called ground truth we need to train AI isn't solid ground at all, I mean, it's more like a shifting landscape of human feelings and opinions. How on earth can we build and test AI systems in a way that's actually reliable? For a long time, the AI field's solution to this was, well, kind of blunt. They just take a simple majority vote. If 6 people vote toxic and 4 vote not, then toxic it is. But think about what that does. It completely ignores all the nuance. It erases the fact that 40% of people had a totally different and totally valid point of view. You're basically throwing away crucial information. And this isn't just some philosophical debate. It's a real scientific problem. Reproducibility is the absolute bedrock of good research. It just means that if someone else follows your steps, they should get your results. But if your ground truth completely changes depending on which 5 people you happen to ask that day, your results become unreliable and your research just isn't reproducible. So all of this brings us to this really great metaphor for the whole challenge, something researchers call the forest versus tree problem. At the end of the day, it's about a very practical question. How do you spend your limited time and money to get the best possible data from human raters?
The two strategies are pretty straightforward. The forest approach is all about breadth. You show tons of different items, but only to a few people each. The tree approach is the opposite. It's all about depth. You show way fewer items, but you get opinions from lots and lots of people on every single one.
Think about it like this. Do you want a kind of vague, general idea of how good a restaurant is by asking 1,000 people about their one dish? That's the forest. Or do you want a super deep, nuanced understanding of 50 specific meals from a panel of 20 food critics? That's the tree. For years, AI has mostly been wandering around in the forest.
So, the big question is, which one is actually better? To finally figure this out, researchers at Google designed a massive experiment. They decided to put these two strategies head-to-head in a huge simulation to see which one would hold up under pressure.
So here's how they did it. First, they started with real data from things like hate speech detection, where disagreement is everywhere. Then they fired up a simulator to run thousands and thousands of scenarios. They had 2 main levers to pull: N, the number of items being rated, and K, the number of people rating each item. The whole goal was to find those magic combinations that gave them statistically solid results every single time.
And the results from this massive stress test were really interesting. They walked away with 3 major findings that seriously challenge how we normally do things in the world of AI evaluation.
Okay, first things first, and this is a big one. The standard practice of using just 3 to 5 raters to decide the truth for an item, well, it's often not nearly enough. It can lead to results that are just plain unreliable and impossible to reproduce. I mean, just look at the difference here. When you rely on just a handful of people, your foundation is shaky, the results aren't statistically significant. But the moment you increase that number to 10 or more raters, you suddenly get a much stronger, much more reliable signal. You're actually capturing the true spectrum of what people think. So the second big takeaway is that there's no single perfect strategy. The best choice, whether you should go for the forest or the tree, depends completely on what you're trying to achieve. So here's the cheat sheet. If your only goal is to predict the majority opinion, that simple winner-take-all answer, then the forest approach of looking at more items is your best bet. But if you want to understand the full range of human disagreement, the nuance, then the tree approach with more raters per item is the only way to do it. And here's the most hopeful part of the whole study. You might be thinking that getting tons of raters sounds incredibly expensive, right? But the research found that's not necessarily true.
You can get highly reliable results without totally breaking the bank.
In fact, get this. The researchers found that with a pretty modest budget of around 1,000 total ratings, you can get extremely solid and reproducible data. The key is just picking the right ratio of items to raters based on your goal. It's about being strategic, not just spending more money.
Okay, so what's the big picture takeaway from all this? What does it mean for the future of AI? Well, it really signals a fundamental shift in how we need to think about building and judging these systems.
For decades, AI research has pretty much run on this one assumption, that for any problem, there's a single, objective, correct answer, a ground truth. The AI's whole job was just to learn what that answer was.
But the new reality is so much more complicated. As AI gets involved in really subjective parts of our lives, like ethics, safety, and art, that old way of thinking just breaks down. The goal isn't to find one right answer anymore. It's to understand and navigate the entire messy, beautiful landscape of human perspectives.
A quote from the research sums it up perfectly. It says that all that variation in human opinion, that's not just noise that we need to filter out. That variation is the signal. And the most powerful AI systems of the future will be the ones that understand not just our consensus, but our disagreements too.
Which leaves us with one final massive question to think about. If we're building an AI that isn't just chasing a single correct answer, then what should its goal be? To reflect the majority view? To understand the outliers? Or maybe something else entirely? Honestly, that's something we're all going to have to figure out together as we build what comes next.